Tenth Circuit held that in Wyoming, corner crossing and crossing private airspace or the airspace over private property is trespass under civil law.
Civil trespass.
Civil trespass, exactly. Civil trespass is preempted by what's called the Unlawful Enclosures Act. The Unlawful Enclosures Act is an act that was passed in the 1800s, and it basically was passed because of this checkerboard and the railroad grants that we were talking about. You had people that were successors that owned the railroad grants that were blocking off public land, either fencing off water sources, because we're talking about the Western United States where, man, there's just not a lot of rain, right? Really arid, blocking off the water sources, blocking off public access to the grazing, and blocking off, homesteaders and mineral development. So Congress came in and said, you can't block this stuff. And basically said, we're not going to allow you to fence off public parcels. Basically, the most important thing to know is these early cases all dealt with what's called range wars. So you had different livestock producers and grazers fighting each other, sometimes physically, sometimes legally, a lot of times both, preventing access to public lands. And basically in all of those cases, there's cases in the Supreme Court and there's cases from the circuit courts basically said you cannot fence off or prevent access to public lands.
This was some private parties doing everything they possibly could to not touch the private ground and did not do so.
Yep.
And overcame the obstacles intended to keep the public off the public land.
Exactly. And that is what they said in Iron Bar, right? Is that because there was an effective barrier to the public land. Because again, to remind everyone in this case, there weren't like all these fences around the public land. It wasn't like there was this physical barrier, right? There was this legal barrier. And what the 10th Circuit said in Iron Bar is that a legal barrier to the public land is still a barrier that cannot be used under the Unlawful Enclosures Act.